thanks for being here with me. We are back talking about the Zoroastrians today. I have a previous video, and I'll put a link to it in the description of this one, that talks about the basics of the faith, the founder Zarathustra, and also some of the belief system. And I said that I'd make another video about the rituals and the symbols. And the first symbol that I want to mention is very visible. It is on many of the Zoroastrian temples, all of them, in fact. And you see it in other places in the literature and even in jewelry that Zoroastrians wear. And it would be comparable to Christians wearing a cross or a crucifix, or a Jewish person having the Star of David as a symbol. So it's called the Faravahar, and let me explain a little bit about it with this short PowerPoint presentation. So let me tell you about one of the symbols of the Zoroastrian religion called the Faravahar. This symbol, you'll see it on the temples, the Zoroastrian temples, often above the entryways or atop the outer facade. It represents the principles of the faith. You'll also see it in other places, including jewelry worn by the Zoroastrian people. There are 3 texts below the figure which read good thoughts, good words, and good actions, the 3 principles of the faith. And the 3 rows of feathers on the wings that extend out from the body have the same meaning. Now, the 3 rows of feathers below the figure are the opposite of goodness. They stand for bad thoughts, bad words, bad actions, those things to be avoided. There are 2 circles on the figure, one in the left hand representing the faith of the worshiper, the spiritual marriage of the worshiper with Ahura Mazda. And some believe this is the origin of the custom of exchanging wedding rings. Now, the second is around the torso of the figure, and that represents the circle of life itself, and also that we are enclosed in the entire universe. It is the cycle of the universe. The figure is an old man, and the beard represents wisdom. The extended right hand represents respect. The figure is usually depicted as dressed in white, representing religion. A major Zoroastrian symbol, it's called the Faravahar. And like symbols in all religions, it can have several interpretations. So I have heard additional things about this symbol, but those are the basics. The ancient Iranians, prior to this religion, worshipped fire and water. Although fire plays a large part in the worship of Zoroastrians, they do not worship fire. Their temples are called fire temples, but they see that pain in our world is due to darkness. Darkness in many ways, but primarily misunderstanding, missing the truth, and turning toward evil or darkness. And fire brings light. It lights everything. and it warms the heart. It warms us. And so, although they don't worship fire, they worship around the fire, and they worship Ahura Mazda around the fire, symbolically seeing truth and their God more clearly. In the fires, they burn cherry wood because it's a clean burning wood and it burns for a long time. A holy fire, a fire is considered a holy fire if it burns for over 1,000 years. So these are perpetual fires. The fire at the temple in Yazd is claimed to have burned for at least 1,200, perhaps as much as 1,400 years. And the people are called the people of the flame, and the priests keep the holy fires lit several times a day. Some say 5, and some scholars have said 3 times a day, but they make sure that there is fresh wood on the fire and that the flame is eternal. Now, also, if a Zoroastrian person, was having a special celebration in their home, perhaps a wedding or a birthday celebration, the coming of age of a child, and they wanted holy fire in their celebration, in their ritual, they go to the priest and he gives them coals, a very small portion of the holy fire that they can bring to their home for their celebration. Now, the fire temple in Yazd in Iran is not only a place of worship, but it's also a very important tourist site where people go to learn about the faith. And there are some really good videos on YouTube of tours of that area where people have gone as tourists, and the tour guides or commentators, narrators of the videos explain what they're seeing. The Iranian government, of course, encourages tourism, and so this is an important part of the income of the people of Yazd. Now, this is the community where the Zoroastrians fled when the Muslim invaders conquered the Persian Empire and made life difficult for them to continue worship of their God as they had in the past. And so over time, they moved to the outskirts of the desert, and that is where you find this city of Yazd. Here and in other places are what was pictured at the beginning of my video, the Dakhma, called the Tower of Silence. Now, one of the things about Zoroastrians was they believe that truth is cosmic goodness, that it is growth and life and purity. And so what they attempt to do was to avoid any kind of destruction or decay. So this led to what we might consider some really unusual beliefs about caring for people who had died. And that was the purpose of the Towers of Silence. So when someone died, they were wrapped in white cloth, and in the center of the tower is a large opening, a large pit or ditch. And after the prayers were said and the body was wrapped in the white, they were put into the center ditch. Then the doors of the tower were locked in order to keep marauding animals out. that might tear pieces off the body and carry them to other places, which someone might inadvertently come in contact with and be made ill as they were contaminated by this piece of flesh. But then the door was locked. The people separated into their families, sort of like a self imposed isolation. I would presume a period of mourning and grief, but also a waiting for what would happen next. And what happened next was vultures came and they ate the flesh off of the bodies of the deceased. And after the vultures were done, the family was notified. They could request one or two of the bones to take home with them if they asked for them. And I'm presuming as a remembrance of the person who had passed. Now, this is the old way of doing it. This is not what's happening today. I'll get to that in just a minute. And then the bones that were left in the center of the Tower of Silence, lime was put on these bones to decompose them. The people who cared for the dead were called untouchables. Now, I'm sure you're probably aware of the caste system in India, where certain people are called untouchables and are the lowest caste and are completely marginalized by those people in the higher castes. Even though the Zoroastrians who cared for the dead were called untouchables, that was because they were in contact with people who had carried disease, and they might in some way carry that contagious disease because they had touched the bodies. The untouchables were allowed, they were the only ones allowed to touch the bodies of the deceased. But they were respected by the community. They were considered the brave ones because they were willing to put their own health at risk by caring for those who had passed. Very different than the idea of the untouchables in the Indian caste system. The burying of the bodies in the ditch, they weren't buried, they were exposed to the vultures, also protected the soil from the decomposition of the deceased that might in some way affect the soil, which would later inadvertently be used for growing crops. Now, in the 1960s in Iran, for health reasons, this practice was outlawed. And so today, people are either cremated or they are buried in the new cemeteries that have been established. And while they are still not put in wooden coffins, they're wrapped in white and they're placed in a coffin that's made of concrete, and a concrete lid is put over it. The the community at Yazd is famous for three things. One is that it is the community of the Zoroastrians and has the fire temple. Two, it's famous for its water system that brought water to the community, and for its wind towers that keep the homes of the Zoroastrians cool in the desert heat. And finally, for the Towers of Silence. Well, I hope you found this short video informative and you've learned some more about the religion of the Zoroastrians. I want to thank you for joining with me and watching this video. And if you haven't done so and you're interested in topics like this, I hope you'll give the video a thumbs up, and you'll also subscribe to the channel and check out some of the other uploads I have made about the various religions and writings of ancient times. The spirituality of the people is quite interesting. And also, if you have comments or questions or suggestions for a group that you'd like to learn about, I hope you'll put them in the comment section. And join with me again next week. I try as best I can to upload each Saturday a new topic, and I will see you then.